Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this month today, and welcome to the third in our monthly webinar series, where we take a look each month at the month ahead in EU public affairs and provide some advice and some insights for how you can leverage your time and attention as impactfully as possible. We hope this will be valuable. We aim for it to be valuable for all levels of experience, and we look forward to any feedback from you as we take this series forward. My name is Michel. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Lanzcape, which is a new advocacy app and one that does something really different and new and innovative in Brussels. It's a mobile app. You can get it for free, and the really big thing that it does is provide advice right in the app. So advocacy support and advice right in the app, and synced to the monitoring of files and a lot more. You can download it and start using it for free, and we'll send you some more information afterwards, but you can get it for Android, iPhone, and for your laptop. And now I'm going to introduce our speaker. I'm very proud that we have Alan Hardacre, who is a co-founder of Lanzcape and also a co-founder of our sister company, AdvocacyStrategy. Alan is a leader in professionalizing advocacy by identifying best practice at all levels, both outward-facing, lobbying, but also within organizations, which is a key part of managing a public affairs operation. And so you are in the very best hands as Alan now takes over from me and takes this webinar forward.
Super. Thanks, Michel. Yes, thanks, Michel. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I'm looking forward to now running through a little bit what we're going to do for the next 40 minutes. So again, a pretty short, sharp, bite-sized view of the EU month ahead. So we are going to look at the key institutional milestones in the month of December. We're also going to look at what that means from a lobbying perspective. So some key advice: what should you be thinking of? What could you be doing? And what should you be preparing? As usual, we will look at the Parliament, we will look at the Commission, we will look at the councils, both configurations of the council. We'll also then take a quick look at some of the other things that are happening, some of the other milestones and events that you may wish to get involved in. So without any further ado, let's jump straight in. Now, important perhaps to start with where we landed last month. So last month in the November edition, we landed on a checklist of 3 key items. So one was about the new commissioners coming in. The second was to continue analysis of the strategic priorities and especially the commissioner mission letters. And thirdly was the internal side of things, which will be useful at that time in November, in terms of the internal documents that one should be looking at, priorities, some of the stakeholder mapping that you could be fleshing out given the identity of the new stakeholders, and building up your campaign plans. Now, I think those things are very much a basis for what we will talk about this month and some of the actions that we will look to take forward in December. So, if we look at December, what do we see as top line? So, of course, now we're very happily the second official day of the new commission term, which effectively started in earnest yesterday. We'll dig into that in a little bit more detail. What does that mean and what's coming next? Also, as we roll into December, we're moving into the last 3 operational weeks. I mean, obviously, the Hungarian presidency lasts until the end of December, but effectively there are 3 working weeks in December. So the Hungarian presidency is going to be trying to close off as much as possible and handing over to the Polish presidency, who start on the 1st of January. So we need to take a little bit more of a look at that. Also in December, possibly the single biggest item that we are waiting for is Work Programme 2025. So I think all eyes are on when this will be published. There is some expectation that this will be in December, but of course this can also run into January. And again, we'll take a little bit more of a look at that. And then If we're talking about the work program, there is a second document that is critical to keep an eye on, and that is the interinstitutional agreement on the work program 2025, which is basically the aligned set of priorities out of the work program that the three institutions will basically fast track, work on, and put to the front of their planning agendas. So that's pretty much top line. And I guess what we're starting to move into now, this is our third webinar, as Michelle said, we're starting to move towards what you would call now more business as usual. The last few webinars have been very much focused on the politics and the transition that we see happening in the EU. Now we're starting to get into the file-based developments that will characterize 2025. So very much a return to business as usual, you probably starting somewhere in January and February once we have the work program out. So in terms of top line advice for this month, the first thing that one should be doing now is the commissioners will be starting to put into place their teams, their cabinet. So trying to understand who those people are. Good luck. There is some good news on this one, is that this will all be published online. So unlike now the commission services, which have all disappeared offline, the commissioners will flag their teams, their portfolios and everything online. So this is something that can be mapped relatively easily. Also, from an advice perspective, now that the commission is officially in place, we expect a number of structural changes within the commission as the services and DGs align to the new portfolios that have been agreed as part of the new commission mandate. So again, there'll be a bit of musical chairs, one expects, in certain areas of the commission. From an advice perspective, the third point for December is very much to not underestimate the Hungarian presidency's push to adopt any last-minute compromises. This is characteristic of every presidency. The last month is the month of trying to close off as much as possible. No presidency likes to hand over a 99% complete file to the next presidency. It's all about showing what you demonstrated during your presidency. So if there's any way to close it off, the Hungarians will do so. Then in terms of preparation, it's a little bit looking ahead. Of course, you can look to the trio presidency, but I think we would be mainly now focusing on the Polish presidency and what that means, what their agenda is. We'll have more on that coming in the month of December, but also making sure we know who all of those key counterparts in the Polish Perm Rep and beyond are. And then last but not least, we will touch on this towards the end of today's webinar, is very much preparation for the work program. Okay, so the work program is coming. Do you expect something to be in there? Do you not expect something to be in there? And maybe some scenario planning, just basically getting yourself ready. So if what you want is there, what does that mean? What do you do? What could the potential milestones and timelines be? And what does that mean for your activities? Or alternatively, there's something that you would want in the work program that's not in the work program. Because quite interestingly, as we roll into January, February, work will already start on the beginnings of work program 2026. So maybe that's something you also need to think about. So that's very much the top line of where we are in December. So quite a few items. So let's get into them in a little bit more detail then. So the European Commission. So of course, after lengthy negotiations this summer and some back and forth with the European Parliament and then the vote that took place at the end of November, we finally have a commission, we finally have our commissioners, and they are now formally in place and the mandate is starting. So first of all, they will establish their cabinet. Okay, so this will then go on the website and you will be able to determine who are the key people, what are their responsibilities. That should be pretty clear. Also expect a little round of musical chairs with Director Generals. There has been a long-standing rule that you do not have the Director General and a Commissioner of the same nationality. And that usually triggers a little bit of a round of, as I say, musical chairs, as some of these roles have to change, or maybe new people are wanted in those positions. So again, and that kind of leads to the structural point in the Commission, where we understand there has been already some thinking around some form of structural change in the DGs and some of the units to reflect the new structure and the new portfolio. So I guess that's something to keep an eye on. Much of that won't necessarily be too publicly announced, so I guess staying close to that will be important. And then I guess what will be happening then is the new commissioners and their teams will be coming in. They will know the mission letters upside down, inside out. They will have been familiarized with the work program and what that means for their respective area in 2025 and what they need to do and take forward. And they will start to plan and work with the services on making all of this happen. And that will go into the internal reporting structures, but will also be visible externally on what we see happening. They will also take the internal briefing books. So all of the services had to prepare a briefing book back in the spring for the incoming commissioners. So again, everything should be already encoded and they should be ready to hit the ground running when they start. And of course, December then is the month where we expect the work program to be finalized. Now, of course, this is an annual process. This year is a strange year. It depends on certain contingencies, but we now have the commission in place on the 1st of December. There is no reason this can't be published in the next few weeks. However, in the past, this has drifted into January. So again, keeping an eye out for this is critical because it's going to shape exactly what happens next year in what priority order. And then the last bit is the joint declaration on the annual work program. That is already under discussion. And that then basically is an agreement between the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council. The Council in this guise is going to be the trio presidency because they are the people who are going to inherit this. So starting with the Polish. And it's going to outline the shared priorities for the legislative and policy agenda. And that basically means which initiatives and actions do the three institutions agree to take forward as a priority. And those are the items that they will all respectively try to build into their planning cycles. So for the council, this will mean working party meetings, co-repair time. For the Parliament, this will making sure that this is into the right committees quickly, and all of the requisite logistical support is provided behind these files. So already from that, you will get a very good indication of what's going to move and what's going to move quickly. And what is going to move less quickly. Okay, so that is the very top line of the commission. You can visualize this a little bit as you see here. So we've gone past the approval of the von der Leyen II commission. The college has officially assumed office. You will get some nice photographs of commissioners in the court in Luxembourg taking their oath, as all commissioners have to do, to state their independence to pursue this role free of national interest. And then basically they will get into some discussions of work program 2025 planning, after which we expect to see the publication of the work program and the joint declaration. And then below that, in the background, as we discussed, lots of the structural and the final people pieces of this jigsaw, all of which you will need to try and capture then in your stakeholder mapping. But we'll come to that right here, because in terms of advice then for the commission in December, mapping the commissioners' teams carefully and quickly. We say carefully and quickly for the reason that it is going to be the time when everybody tries to reach out to commissioners and their teams to introduce themselves, align with their agenda, especially once Work Programme 2025 has been published, because then everybody will want to talk, introduce, put their policy positions forward. So if you are intending to be part of that party, then you need to go in early and you need to have a clear, relevant reason why these teams would want to meet you in this first wave of meetings, which is very competitive. This is usually the territory of meeting larger European trade associations, so the collective voices of industry will have a greater chance than individual companies at this point in time. If it is going to be through a company, then it's going to have to be at the highest possible level, simply because this really is a key time to meet key stakeholders. And so therefore, CEOs or trade associations are more likely. Of course, now is the window of opportunity. We talk about gaining more insight, but I think also here it's about planning. It's about looking forward to what could be in, what might not be in. Once you then have the work program itself, it already gives you indications of timing, Q1, Q2, Q3. If you then look at that alongside the joint declaration, you can get a good idea of what may happen when, and you can start to build out your advocacy calendar. Okay, so what are the different things you know are going to happen, and how do you build your work backwards? As all good advocacy, what do you need to do for each of them? So that's pretty much where we are with the commission. And again, this is what we wanted. Really, one thing to stress here, which is extremely important. If there's one thing you could be doing, and you either do it now slightly in advance, or the moment you get the work program and the joint declaration of the institutions, is to then be prepared. So here, this is a screenshot of the last work program. The most important bit of the work program is, of course, the annex. In the annex, you have all of the individual files that will be taken forward and at what point. So that's the thing that most people are interested in. Are my files in here? When are they going to get taken forward? And it's very much about then locking it in. What is the expected date? Okay, so what are all the steps of the European decision-making process? And so, what is an indicative timing? What do I need to prepare for when? And therefore, what do I need to do now to get myself in the right place for this? So there is a preparedness element here because, of course, very few things are going to kick off in January itself. A lot of this will be coming Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 as the services get themselves behind these new priorities. So preparedness is probably the key word when it comes to the work program. And I guess the other thing with the work program that's going to be important, and maybe is something to take note of now and reflect on, most organizations, trade associations are going to have to report on this internally. And this is quite a timely report to have, i.e. the day it comes out is usually the day you need to be telling people this has come out, this is what's in it, this is what's important. So it's maybe already useful to think now about, okay, what format am I going to use to convey this information? What do I need to do? Can I already structure some of this up and then add in the details on the day itself to save yourself an evening of panic so that you are one step ahead. Okay, so if we move then over to the Parliament, so the Parliament is going to have its last plenary session rather handily on the 16th to the 19th of December, so they run quite late, although I suspect there will not be too many MEPs floating around on the afternoon of the 19th of December in Strasbourg. Nonetheless, that is the last session of the year. There are committee meetings then on the 2nd to the 5th, so taking place this week and then again next week in preparation for the plenary session the week after. So you'll probably see, therefore, that that's 3 active weeks in the Parliament here, which is, I think, quite significant amounts of activity. And the agendas are starting to ramp up a little bit now. So, of course, they have all of the overhang files that we've discussed in previous webinars that are now coming back to life. Rapporteurs have been nominated. They are now starting to move on a lot of these files. So activity is now really starting to build, which is giving us an opportunity to follow the committees, get to know the new personalities, the new dynamics. We're also having the first votes on a lot of issues in the Parliament, which is allowing us to observe the new voting patterns. And there are some very new voting patterns. So at the moment, we're getting a lot of good contextual information from the Parliament on people, politics and votes, which is very useful. And with these 3 weeks of activity in December, we will get a lot more. So plenty to be following and observing from the Parliament side in December. So again, I think really the next 2 weeks of the committee is the weeks where there's probably going to be the most detailed engagement, if you have any, as we run up into the plenary. The plenary, of course, are often weeks where it's last touch engagement to build on what you've already done. Very bad idea if that's the first time you decide to pop up is in a plenary week, especially if you pop up in late December, not likely to be successful. There's also then now a good opportunity to start focusing on what files are going to be discussed in committee, what's getting carried over into January, February, especially anything that's looking early January in the Parliament. You may wish to try and do your preparation and homework now. You may also wish to try and set up your meetings now so that you don't get caught short when everybody returns on somewhere around the 6th, the 3rd or the 6th of January to get back into work. So yes, a lot of people will be trying to meet in the Parliament early December, but I think the good thing here is to be already setting up things for January. And then maybe a note of interest for people who are really looking ahead and trying to do some more proactive work. The work program will come out, and as it does, we are not the only people looking at the work program and thinking what this might mean. The Parliament is also going to be extremely focused on this, not only in terms of the priorities and the joint declaration, but also very much in terms of the different committees. What are the files that are going to come up? Who could be the rapporteur? Which political groups will try to take the file? So the work program generally also triggers a lot of political reflection within the Parliament about, okay, what key files do we want to get? Who could be a good rapporteur? So if you are an organisation or of any sort who wants to get involved in that type of political discussion, the moment this is published is the moment that discussion will trigger. So, for example, I would expect there to be quite a lot of informal discussion of this going into and around the Strasbourg plenary week. So if that's something you're interested in, then there is a bit of a window of opportunity to start engaging certain political groups or key stakeholders in the Parliament around what's going to happen, what they see, and what your view of that is. So the council, okay, so the council is also going through a bit of a busy month. So the first obvious point, and not the commission, much as you may not see this quite in the press, but the commission is not the only new institution taking office on the 1st of December. Antonio Costa is also taking the new presidential role of the EU Council as of yesterday as well. So again, this is he's coming in. We'll also be naming his team as he comes in and facilitating a smooth transition for cohesion and continuity in the council, and starting then with a European Council meeting also on the 19th and 20th of December. This is, of course, mostly not great news for people in public affairs when the Parliament runs until the 19th and the European Council meets on the 19th and 20th. Because it means we'll probably have a lot of reporting to do around about the 21st, 22nd, even into the 23rd of December. So again, European Council 1920 means there will probably be some reporting back on the things that they have been discussing then. We mentioned the end of the Hungarian presidency, okay, rolling out this month, trying to finish off their files, handing over to the Polish as of the 1st of January. Co-Repair continues to meet on its standing weekly basis, Co-Repairs 1 and 2 on Mondays and Wednesdays, and there are a number of council configuration meetings also taking place in December. And last but not least, there is a Eurogroup meeting, okay, so the Eurogroup being a separate Euro-driven group who also meet on a frequent basis. They will be meeting on the 9th of December. Then, of interest of note from national perspective, Croatian presidential election at the end of December, and we had the first round of Romanian parliamentary elections on the 1st, so yesterday, and there is a second round on the 8th of December. So a potential couple of changes in the council nationally coming up this month. So just in terms of what's on the agenda, especially when it comes to the European Council, okay, so there is a bit of external and military, Ukraine, European defense, there's energy security, there is our favorite new buzzword in Brussels, competitiveness. That is going to be under discussion. There is a little bit of a discussion on food and climate security, health security, and information security. So yeah, quite a few bits and pieces that are going to be discussed at the European Council. Which usually, just for reference and as a reminder, European Councils, the conclusions are the key thing we need to read. And in the conclusions of European Council meetings, there are normally a list of actions or requests to the European Commission. Those are the things that we're looking out for. What are they asking for, in what order, and in what priority? So if we jump on, what should we be focusing on when it comes to the Council in December? So I think, the continued effort of building relations across the council working groups, these are people and groups that have not changed. So this is the institution of continuity right now, but also perhaps maybe in the new team of the president. Again, although these are very high level figures to get hold of, but should this ever be of relevance, now will be a good time to map them and maybe reach out as they take office. In terms of the new council president, maybe good to just do a bit of research who Mr. Costa is, any previous statements, the issues that were key to him in the past, to have a bit of a sense of how he may be steering these discussions. But of course, it's incredibly important to remember that the role is really that of a facilitator. So facilitating and trying to find consensus in what is a very difficult group to find consensus. Of course, then we've got some more co-repair, more working group development, some council developments. There's going to be the European Council on the 19th and 20th. So there's probably quite a few internal updates and reports required this month from council development. So be sure to stay on top of those. And then, of course, keeping your eye on what it is the Hungarian presidency's tail shot. So what are all the things they're going to try and get signed off in the next few weeks? There's usually a surprise or two where a file goes from seemingly not finalized to finalized. But really then start looking at, okay, what's rolling over into the Polish presidency? What are they saying about this? What is their position as you then prepare for January, basically? Okay, so we're moving towards the close of this sort of lightning December overview. And of course, it's fantastic that we're doing this in a way that we're heading into the winter break for many people, although having noted previously then that a lot of the institutions are running up and right until the 20th of December probably means we'll have a bit of overhang, especially if they do the absolutely horrible, if they give us the horrible Christmas gift of publishing the work program very late in December, so anywhere 19, 20, 23, that will create a bit of a turbulent or a bit of a busy time for people, because that is a key moment of internal reporting and sort of the start of much more strategic reflection. So let's hope they publish early or in early January. So what are some good tips for getting things done before the break? A lot of people in Brussels tend to send these seasonal greetings to key contacts in the institutions or brief thank you notes for any cooperation or any work together. Just a good way of reminding people or staying on people's radars as we transition across into the new year. Urgent meetings, preferably in the first 2 weeks of December, the last week other than the Strasbourg plenary and the European Council meeting, but both for which you can of course continue work that week, but otherwise it's mostly slow down as of the 15th. And then really the big thing to prepare probably now, just in case it comes next week or sorry this week or next week, is preparing your work program internal reporting and plans to make sure you're ahead of this. And then anything in terms of what you should be preparing now for after the break, the main thing is to make sure that you're looking at the agendas of the institutions in January and pre-booking anything you need to now so that you are in time. In terms of other developments this month, so there's quite a few bits and pieces. There is a large European Sustainable Energy Week running from the 10th to the 12th of December. There is the EU Western Balkans Summit on the 18th of December. Politico is running a Sustainability Future Week starting tomorrow, running for 3 days. There is also a Raw Materials Week running from the 9th to the 13th of December. I mean, if we just take the Politico Sustainability Future Week, many of you have probably seen some of the advertising that Politico has done around this, quite a high level event, quite a lot of people involved. This is talking about things like racing against the clock, can the Green Deal deliver? It's talking about agriculture, fueling cleaner transport, energy, and then subjects that are becoming the key subjects. I mean, how do we take industrial policy and sustainable competitiveness together? And also talking about the circular economy. So again, lots of different things in those weeks. I think they tend to be quite good events to follow, especially to see who else is attending, maybe get a little bit more information and context on the direction of travel. And then, of course, last but not least, in December is very much the single biggest Brussels networking month, as there are a number of Christmas events, receptions, drinks, all sorts of formal clubs, associations, informal groups, have all sorts of different opportunities to gather. So it is the single biggest networking month, tends to be quite intense and hard work for those people who are in the middle of it all. The only thing we would say when it comes to these types of networking events is to be a little bit conscious of how you're going to do this, so that it is not just a case of turning up to lots of different events. Do this in some sort of structured way, knowing who you may wish to meet, what you want to get out of it, and being a little bit more intentional. So, as we close off on the whistle stop tour, so that to open up if anyone has any questions, yeah, so as we say, what should you be focusing on when it comes to these other developments? Understanding where you need to be for visibility, networking, and boosting your institutional picture. People have changed in Brussels, the politics is changing, and also the EU has just performed one of its biggest 5-year term pivots in recent memory, pivoting from a 5-year Green Deal mandate to a 5-year EU competitiveness mandate. So a lot of things are changing, a lot of things are relatively uncertain. So it's a good opportunity to be out talking to people, understanding who's who, what their take of the politics is, how do they see competitiveness working alongside the overhang of Green Deal initiatives. So a lot of stuff to be looking at and talking to people about. And then, yes, otherwise, as we've said, focusing on you've got all the right structures in place to map the new stakeholders as you see them coming through, preparing your engagement assets for 2025 and making sure you are ready for the announcement of Work Programme 2025. And we base that on the premise that structured public affairs is the strongest chance of success in public affairs. So anything from your priorities and data at the beginning to the situational analysis, which is where we are now, starting to be in a phase of the understanding the new dynamics around your files, but more generally in the politics and policy of Brussels, leading then to robust monitoring, your stakeholder mapping, your position papers, the alliances that you can form that you should be building ready for your engagement, the strategy, how you're going to deploy this, your direct and indirect engagement, so your associations and what you do yourself, and then setting this up in a way that you can evaluate it and measure it, and then making sure you lock this in to your internal reporting structures. So hopefully I land on there our December 2024 checklist, but maybe that's a good time now to see if people have any questions, comments, reflections, anything else they see as important for December, anything we have not talked about that we should talk about. Please don't be shy. All questions are good questions.
I think everyone's mic is off. I'm not sure anyone can turn their own mic on in this particular meeting, but I've received 3 questions, Alan, so why don't I just read them off from the start at the top.
Sure.
In fact, this is not about the Work Programme 2025, this is about the next one. If our issue isn't in the Work Programme 2025, but we want to get it into Work Programme 2026, you mentioned that work on that starts, I believe you said in February. Where do we start? How do we go about starting that process?
Yes, that is a good question. I think that's a question that a lot of organizations should be asking themselves. And I guess it depends. So there is an annual process for setting a work program, and that generally starts around about February. It builds up to around about June, July, when all of the services give the Secretariat General the ideas or the files that they want to take forward in the next work program. The college discusses that over the summer. That takes the shape of a bit of a work program that goes around about the time of the State of the Union and then gets published in the autumn. So you can see how already in February, March is a good time to be talking to Commission services. And I think once you've got all the documents are out now, the strategic priorities, the mission letters, the work programs, it's understanding where is your issue in all of that and how can you be promoting your issue to be in a work program. And you need to be starting. If it's not there, you need to start immediately. That becomes then a bit of a process from there, working back from all of these milestones that exist in the planning process. So it's a great question. It should start straight away. If it's not in there, the next day, you should be working on your strategy to get it in the next one.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, next question. Regarding the appointment of rapporteurs on files that are in the Work Programme 2025, what would you say about trying to anticipate the MEPs who are most likely to be named to a particular file and holding preparatory conversations with them to try to get ahead of the game?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with identifying who you believe the key rapporteur candidates would be and reaching out to discuss the issue with them and positioning yourself early as someone who is interested, competent, has got some value to give. I guess the key part of that, of course, is that you do have some value to give. So if you have valuable insight, reflection, overview of the file, and this is where there really is a big opportunity because, of course, many MEPs are new. So if you believe that some of those candidates are people who have not been working in this policy space at the European level before. Of course, many organizations have an institutional knowledge that goes much further back. But yes, reaching out to those MEPs, positioning yourself, very good idea.
Great, thank you. I have received one last question here. We have read much about the new party politics in the EP, and you also mentioned it. How might it impact a file-level lobbying strategy?
Yes. Okay. So clearly, the balance of power in the European Parliament is more split than it has ever been before. So it's not simply possible to work with 2 or 3 groups as it was in the past. But there do seem to be some sort of issue and political alliances forming as to how voting takes place, although it's still too early to turn that into a general rule. I guess when it comes down to a specific file, you need to understand what is shaping up to be those dynamics. Is there a dynamic where different groups are putting themselves together, or is there just is there some sort of alliance forming, be that informal or formal? So on a file level, it's going to be about following it. From an engagement level, it tends to mean that you're going to have to engage more widely than perhaps you have in the past. So in the past, most lobbyists confine themselves to the 3 largest groups in the Parliament. I think going forward, you are likely going to have to reach out more widely across the political spectrum to understand what people think and what voting intentions are, to give yourself an opportunity to understand the dynamics and potentially influence the dynamics across the spectrum. And I appreciate that for many people, either individually or organizationally, that is going to be a challenge because you're going to have to move into the far left and the far right.
Okay. Thank you for that. And that actually brings us just to 1 minute before the end of the time. So with that, I would like to thank you, Alan, very much for this really valuable and insightful webinar. And I would like to thank all of our guests for joining us today. We will be sharing the recording with those who were here in attendance. And so you'll have time to go back over it at leisure. And we will also be sharing very soon the timing of the next month. I believe it may be on the 7th of Jan. We'll let you know by email. So thank you very much and have a fantastic December and a fantastic end of the year.